Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Five-Star Joshi Show here on the Fight Game Media Network, as well as my YouTube channel. I am your host, as always, Scott Edwards. I had said that I was going to clip up my Stardom review from Fight Game Media Network's YouTube channel. You can go check that out right now. Instead, I have a very special version of a review because today I am joined by none other than the man that called the action in the building, and that was my good friend Walker Stewart. Welcome, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I hate to say it, I'm a little ashamed to say it. No suit jacket, nothing today. You're getting a man who has traveled many miles all throughout the country of Japan. I went straight from, and if you don't know the country of Japan, that's fine. You could Google it or something. Hiroshima to Yokohama is a hell of a trip, and I've made the trip directly back within 48 hours, and it's been a lot. It's been incredible, but it's been a hell of a time. So, and we're recording at night, so we're getting
Mm,
stuff done today, aren't we, Scott?
yes, absolutely. For those who don't know, Walker was on the call for All-Star Grand Queendom on the English side of things and was solo for majority of the show. Uh, Obviously, credit to Waka Tsukiyama for the few matches that she was a part of with you, but for the most part, it was you calling every bit of that action alone. And obviously, you're also there for Wrestling Dontaku this upcoming weekend for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Um, so yeah, we're gonna talk about the show here. We're gonna get Walker's perspective, obviously being there in the building, experiencing that firsthand, the biggest show in Stardom's history. And as I was calling leading into it, the end of an era. Boy, oh boy, has that been proven in more ways than one over the past uh 24 hours, which gives me a good time to plug. If you'd like to see breaking news audio, that's already up on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/at Scott E Wrestling. Mayu Iwatani leaving Stardom. That is made official as of April 28th. Obviously, the biggest news story of many news stories coming out of the World Wonder Ring. Now, before we get to pretty much all the post stuff of All Star Grand Queendom, I think it's always best to try to kind of dive in to that show as a whole and what that show was from a scale of this is kind of our big celebration, right? Since 2023's All Star Grand Queendom, it was how do we top this? I feel like that was always the hope for Stardom. How do we get here? And obviously, a very bumpy road to get here. But as we saw over the past, I want to say 6, 7 months, we saw Stardom rise in popularity, rise in excitement. And of course, a lot of that has to do with the two wrestlers in the main event, Saya Kamatani and Tam Nakano, who wrestled in a career versus career match. But before we get there, we get to the top of the card. So you didn't have to call the Stardom Rumble, which was won by Hanako. For those who don't know, it was pre-show action, but the card did start off with future Stardom action. It was Hina defeating Rana Yagami to get another defense and continue her reign as she chases her sisters in the future. That is something you obviously focused on within the match itself. Um, as someone who has watched Hina grow and watched Rina grow and watched Hanan grow, I think it's very impressive how different the three are, despite obviously all having, similar judoka backgrounds. I think that's always very interesting. And I kind of want to throw this one at you, one that I've been throwing at people, really since watching this match. While Rina is obviously like this charismatic heel, right? We'll talk about her and Hotta, and Hanan's obviously this super baby face, even though the nastiest we ever saw her might have been this show. Uh Hina has a lot of stoic, so, she's very stoic, but at the same time, very solid in the ring. And she comes off to me kind of like a Maika in the long term.
Mm.
Maika isn't very um uh, she isn't she isn't over the top or anything like that. She is her to and she's always been herself, I think, with Micah. And while she can be, silly or whatever from time to time, she carries herself in a certain way. And I think Hina is starting to do that. So when it comes to the future of Stardom, which is as important as ever right now, do you think they set the tone the right way? in the early going?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when it comes to Hina and talking about her, and I think you said this on a review you did very recently. This idea that you can compare the three sisters in any way is almost unfair. It is apples to oranges to bananas. And you look at someone like Hana and you talk about that pure ultra babyface fire. We might not have seen a lot of it in this
Yeah.
Goddesses of Stardom title match that happened on the night. But yeah, you're right. Like there is a stoic nature to Hina that I think that we could really see a lot all throughout God's Eye itself. I
Mhm.
think you see a lot of that in Rana Yagami. You certainly see a lot of that in Shuri later on in the night with the IWGP Women's Championship match. A lot of emotion involved in that one, but still there is that stoic nature. So I think that it does come within the training. I think it does come within the unit of God's Eye. Um, and it leads to a very interesting dynamic where it's somewhere riding the line between a side Hanan might go to and a side that Rita might go to, and it creates a very interesting future of Stardom champion that we have, we talked about it throughout the broadcast. Iron sharpens iron. There was a lot of inner unit action on this card where you look at it, and in the case of something like Stars, you go, "Oh my gosh, these women do not like each other," and there is a
Yeah.
very strong difference in opinion. And then you look at God's Eye, where it was simply a matter of someone's got to be better at the end of the day. That's business is business. And I
Absolutely.
thought that they really kicked things off in a wonderful way here. I think really over delivering is something that I'm seeing a lot of, especially on the side from what I've gotten to see so far out of Rana Yagami. You know,
Mhm.
Yagami had a time limit draw kickoff match in Ryogoku Sumo Hall that I thought was just absolutely phenomenal. And I was kicking myself in the Stardom World crew a little bit at the end of the day, going, God, you should have let us call that action. I know that the kickoff matches don't end
Yeah.
up getting English coverage, different feeds, all that's a lot to work out for the Stardom World team. But gosh, I mean, that was a match that I was just sitting there in the booth watching as it was happening live, slightly preparing for the main card back in December, going, wow, Yagami's really leveled up since the last time I saw her. Then we come here today, the future of Stardom title match. I really thought she brought it as well.
Yeah, there's a real talent there. I think, it's very clear that Stardom sees a lot in her. She's now gonna enter her 3rd round robin style tournament this summer with Catch the Wave that starts actually, I think, next weekend. So, you take notice of those things, right? That if this is someone that they're expecting, especially, I think, to deliver in ring moving forward, which I think is important. I do have some graphics up here we can obviously take a look at to help lead us because I did already have these prepared. So shouts out to me for being prepared. But next up, I think one that people will want to hear you talk about, which is very important, and that is the match between Sayaka Kurara and Thekla. Obviously, this was a late addition to the card. The simplicity was this: if Sayaka Kurara won, Thekla had to join Cosmic Angels, which I remember everyone being like, "That is not one that makes sense," but okay. And, why would they want Thekla, right? Why would the
Mhm.
Cosmic Angels want Thekla? And on the other side of these things was, of course, Thekla wanting a match with Taro Okada. And that alone, I remember I was like, "I don't need that in my life. I don't need to see that match." So, ultimately, what we saw was Sayaka Kurara beating Thekla rather clean in the middle of the ring, and from there, chaos ensued. We watched Thekla beat the hell out of Taro Okada, and in the end, it all paid off for Thekla to get fired. And since then, it has been reported by Fightful that she is on her way to America in some way, shape, or form. We don't know what company, we don't know where, but as someone who's been following Tekla's words for the past year or so, it seems like this has been and is exactly where she wants to be. So congratulations to her in that. But in terms of the story itself, it was building up, building up, building up. She was attacking workers. She was attacking everyone besides the president up until now, and now she had finally done it, and now she's gone. So obviously, a lot more change here. I know not a lot of people will necessarily see Tekla in the same light as a few other wrestlers who have left the company, but still, this is someone who spent her time with the company since 2022 and has been in Japan since I believe 2019 as part of Ice Ribbon and then Stardom. So this is a big change for her, a big change for Hate. a big change for Stardom. I think it's gonna be fascinating to see Hate's overall reaction to some of the things on this show,
Mhm.
which we could talk about, especially after the main event. But yeah, Tech was gone, and you obviously had to witness that as someone who works in that company and works with Okada. You had to watch him, go through that. So, what was your take on this whole Tekla scenario? I'd say.
You know, a lot of what's unfolded with Tekla had happened after the last English broadcast that I had done for the World Wondering Stardom, right? These attacks on ringside officials and security staffers and wanting her hands on Okada, and there was some of these moments when I was having these conversations, taking bookings with Stardom, wanting to come in April. Is this idea of like, well, are we going to be right next to ringside? And as much as I love being right next to ringside, I'm not sure that I wanted to be there if Tekla was in the building and was in that sort of mood. That's the idea
Mm,
that I had coming into this. And well, myself and the Japanese broadcast booth were all the way in the rafters, maybe a little bit too far away, but that's a conversation for a different day. Tekla was going to get her hands on whoever she could get her hands on. And it just so happened that President Taro Okada was the one that was in that line of fire and was actually the one that Tekla wanted the entire time. Tekla got her way, whether she would have expected the firing or not. Well, I'm not too certain about it. It's this revolting nature of Tekla, this need to spread hate, obviously, and it's not, pardon the pun, of course, there, but like there is this unit that is hate. There is Tekla within this unit, and she has been, how do you say, hell bent on this idea. I called it almost this takeover of Stardom, but it wasn't even as much a takeover of Stardom as Tekla had in mind, as it was Tekla just fueled by her own hatred toward management and toward Okada and what Stardom really is propagated up. I mean, you look at Cosmic Angels and everything that Sayaka Kurata represents, everything that Tam Nakano represents, this idea of that idol culture that Tekla hates and that Taro Okada believes in and has
mhm.
propagated and put at the forefront of Stardom. You see it within the matchmaking. There's a reason Tam Nakano was in the main event of the largest show in Stardom history. And so for Tekla to take umbrance with that, it's cost her in a big way. A very uncomfortable, fun fact to know. Well, it's the only person to be in two units at once and then fired the same day. So congratulations to Tekla for making history in that strange note that you will find at the end of it. But yeah, I mean, it's a really complicated situation now. In regard to the reports by Fightful, I have no idea what comes next for Tekla. I know that Tekla is a wonderful athlete, a wonderful competitor. I know that a lot of people don't like what they've seen out of Tekla at certain points throughout her Stardom career, and my only answer to that is I don't believe that she cares if you like what what you have seen out of Tekla in her Stardom career. I don't think any of the women that are in hate care whether you like or dislike what they do, because hate is always going to find a way. I truly believe no matter whether it's the United States or anywhere else in the world that Tekla wanted to go, or any other company in the country of Japan, even should Tekla still have unfinished business here, I think that Tekla will find her way as well.
I do too. I do too, and obviously, wish her the best in her future. I don't. I'm fascinated to see how she does, where she lands, but that is her story now. And for Carrara, she ended any thoughts of using that wish following the main event, which was a I don't wanna say a concern because I think it was a hope for a lot of people heading into that main event that didn't wanna see the retirement of either Saya Kamatani or Tam Nakano. She instead used the wish on the World of Stardom Championship, which was a bit of a shock. She saved it, then just kind of announced it after a match, like, "This is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna challenge the winner of that main event," and obviously the winner of that main event, uh, ended up being exactly who you'd expect, so that will set
Yeah,
up
and
that
I
match. Good.
just to touch on that a little bit, Scott. I mean, I think it really says something about how Sayaka Kurata views Tam Nakano for her to use this wish and announce this wish publicly but privately, right? This idea
Sure.
that it wasn't in the center of the ring, that it wasn't a call out directly after the match. We knew the stipulation going into the main event. We're going to talk about it more as we get into it. No ceremony, no retirement road, nothing. What you get is what you get. If you lose, you are done. You make your way up that ramp and we never see you again. And so far, I mean, it's only been about 24 hours, but that has been held true for the winner of that, or the loser of that main event, rather. And so I believe that there's really a respect that's being shown not only by Cosmic Angels as a whole, but Sayaka Kurata in using that wish to go after Kamatani in the World of Stardom title. Not that she could have expected that at any point.
Yeah.
But right, you see where I'm going with that one. It's just a very interesting point to bring out here.
Next up, we had Yumiko Hotta versus Rina from All Star Grand Queendom. Match. I don't think there was a match on the show that went as expected more than this one. Just kind of Rina showing fight, obviously showing her youth, but also getting a signature match on the show because she's obviously a very big part of Stardom's present and future. Ultimately losing to Hoda by submission. Yeah, this is one of those matches where you know what to expect going in. You just hope Marina looks fine in defeat, and you call it a day. As I like to point out, it was a year ago that Aja Kong beat Tam Nakano on this very show. This is not something
Mm.
that's going to sink Rina. It's a bump in the road of a year that I think is gonna be very big for her. So, I think for me, from your point of view, obviously you've seen Rina a few times. You were there in the building when you were in the building. What was her match on that show? Oh, I always forget what she did at was she in a tag match on Queendom last time around? Because she's obviously had some big matches since then,
Mm.
challenging for the Wonder Stardom Championship. Yeah, Dream Queendom, she was in a three-way 12 woman battle. So a little different, obviously. There was no big match there.
Yeah.
However, um, to start off the year, they did put her with Raka, and I believe her and Raka beat Hanan and Manami. So that was a nice little tag and kind of the kickoff to her year. And we're seeing very quickly that this is a woman who is rising through the ranks. She was in the finals of the Cinderella tournament before coming up short, and now very likely she's going to be joining her first ever world sorry, my apologies, her first ever 5-star Grand Prix this year. So as someone who, obviously you haven't get to call every show, but Rena is someone that is getting featured. Rena is someone that they're getting behind. How has it been seeing kind of her evolve from maybe the first show you called live to now?
You know what? The first event that I had called for Stardom, it was, I believe, Rina versus Hina for the Future of Stardom Championship last year. And in that situation, it was a very interesting time for me to jump in because, I mean, then more than ever, we were talking about the differences between all of these siblings that are within the company, Rina, Hina, and Hanan, right? And I remember Hanan was being in the building and being in the crowd. They would cut to her occasionally on the camera shot as that match was happening. And it was a very emotional one and a very intriguing introduction arena for me because despite being a part of hate and despite actions that I'd argue are not ones that we should support as people that love the purity of professional wrestling. Um, there's a level to Rena where you can't help but love some of the things that she does inside that ring. Some of the trash talk, even a lot of which that we saw in the build against Yumiko Hotta, the conversation about wanting to get rid of All Japan Women's as a topic. All Japan Women's wasn't even around when I was born. Yumiko Hotta wasn't even in her prime while I was alive. I mean, some of that trash talk. I mean, especially, I mean, you're a young guy yourself. I just turned 23 years old, not nearly as young as Rena is at 18, but it's this idea where you can just kind of you really appreciate that fire, right? And I think that Stardom management have to be appreciating that fire, whether they like the way she goes about certain things, knowing that there are even darker paths for Rina to take one day in her career, the likes of Anatsuko Tora, Saya Kamitani by her side, of course. But I think that there's such a bright future for Rina. I think the fact that she was in this position on this card in what you would call a prominent singles match against an All Japan women's legend like Yumiko Hotta, it's a very good sign for Rina going forward. But it's all a matter of capitalizing on any opportunity that comes up. She couldn't manage to capture it against Starlight Kid for the Wonder of Stardom title, but that does not mean that she's not going to get any opportunities coming forward. I think there's something big for Rina in the future.
Yeah, she's on her way, and I think the fascinating thing is she very well could be making a play to be a leader of some sort very, very soon because of the way she carries herself. Next up, we had the final Stardom match of Meiko Satomura. Meiko Satomura is going to retire probably by the time you're seeing this, which is just absolutely surreal to think about. Part of the reason I've been saying that April and May are going to be two of the biggest months we've seen in Joshi wrestling was because of this. Meiko Satomura set the date at the latter half of last year. She was going to be retiring for professional wrestling. Since then, she has gone on a retirement run like no other. That has included a Sendai Girls World Championship reign. That has included her having matches with the likes of Seriano, Shiro Hashimoto, and many, many others. And now we've landed here where she reigned as World of Stardom champion back in 2015 in a very important time in the company's history, defeating Kairi Hojo to win the belt, defending it against Mayu Iwatani, and then, of course, losing it to Io Shirai, who would go on to have a reign like no other. I think the important part of this was simply getting Meiko on the card, but I do also think there's a more intriguing look at this from a Stardom perspective, is that they went 0-2 against Sendai Girls on the night, which I think is very notable. I had thought, you know, basic knowledge, basic thinking. Oh, they'll drop one and they'll win another. It's how wrestling works in situations like this. But no, that was not the case. Meiko Satomura pinned Aya Sakura, who, mind you, got one of the best reactions of the night for her work against the legend. Obviously, the reigning Sendai Girls World Junior Champion. So a credit to her, credit to everyone involved. And I feel like this was really where you saw the show start to take the turn from the undercard to, oh, here we go. And it shouldn't be shocking that it was Meiko Satomura that started to bring that to the show, as well as the Cosmic Angels.
Right. Yeah. I mean, business picked up here, and it was already a very nice Stardom card that was establishing itself. But God, when we talk about business, pick it up. We talk about Meiko Satomura. I had a conversation for the first time in my life and the only time in my life, and it's one that I'm going to cherish for as long as I live, with Meiko Satomura. A very brief conversation as it was, but just one where I expressed, a gratitude to what she has done for the sport and for the business in terms of women's professional wrestling, not just in Japan, but all over the world. And I think it might have been the fact that I'm an American and whatever it may be, but she had asked me like, "Oh, is it me like from NXT or something?" And I had to explain to her like, no, there is even prior to NXT, like Meiko Satomura was one of those Joshi wrestlers that I had been familiar with for the longest time, and like one of the few that I went out of my way, even before I ever had true vested interest in Japanese wrestling, to seek out the footage of and to see what is all the hype about. And the hype was there, so it was a very special moment for me to be able to call what is the penultimate match in the career, the legendary 30-year career, mind you, of Meiko Satomura. And what a match this was. It was everything that you could have wanted it to be, and specifically on the side of Satomura. I thought there was some very nice stuff out of Yuna. I know, very, very green, very young in the sport. Mika Iwata is Mika Iwata. What you see is what you get. All the Iwata content, all the Iwata wrestling that I've seen, a lot of which admittedly being against Saudi Ano. We talked about those 5 previous singles matches they had. One of them back in Ryogoku that I got to call at Dream Queendom last year. It was a wonderful match in that regard. But the stars of this match easily Aya Sakura and Meiko Satomura. That closing stretch had me not only on the edge of my seat but out of my chair. That I was blocking the poor fans behind me. I'm 6'6", 380. All right, it's not a good, not an easy sight for those behind me in any way. But I was out of my chair for that closing stretch, the finish there for Meiko Satomura, and with the win. And there's some people when we talk about not just women professional wrestling, but Japanese wrestling as a whole and really pro wrestling as a whole. We know that there are some stars that go out on top and there are some stars that go out on their back. And whether that is a case of a wrestler taking their foot off of the gas or pushing their foot even harder because they know that their time is limited, we'll talk about that in the main event later on as well. Like, it is no shame in losing to the Yokozuna of professional wrestling. There is no shame in losing to Meiko Satomura, and Aya Sakura taking that pin as Sendai Girls Junior Champion. Almost felt like a little bit of the rub from Meiko Satomura to Sakura in that regard, and I thought that it was just a wonderful showcase in all regards.
Yeah, I know some people can get upset when maybe a retiring wrestler walks out with the win. Meiko Satomura is not a normal retiring wrestler. This is someone who's so very clearly still at the top of her game. But she's retiring at the top of her game. So yeah, it was a wonderful showing. Obviously awesome for you to get your chance to call the action. Based on when this officially comes out, you can check out her retirement match over on Wrestle Universe Live. It will have English commentary and all. So definitely, if you get the chance, embrace and appreciate a legend as she goes out only way she knows how, with surely a incredible main event in a sold out Cork and Hall. Next up, we had a match that really just changed the mood, changed the direction, and changed everything about this card. It was May Sarah versus Suzuki, and when they added the no DQ aspect to this, it instantly went from obviously a fight to a, oh, this is Suzuki's ballpark, and that is trouble for May Sarah. May Sarah is, as many will call, someone you kind of instantly cheer for, just a natural baby face, someone that you don't want to see them upset, right? You don't. When May Sarah got her head smashed in at the Cork and Hall show by Suzuki, I just remember her being in tears and all that. It's like, man, I don't know if Suzuki's a full-time heel or not, but she sure feels like one right now. And on this show, you saw Suzuki come alive again. Uh, at Crazy Fest, she faced Rina Yamashita, and that match was the match she walked away saying, "I feel more alive than I have in a very long time." It should not come as a shock. One, it was I believe it was a no DQ TLC match. Might as well just been a death match. Something that is her background, and she had blood coming from her head, and while she did lose, it didn't bother her. Instead, it seemingly lit the fire in her to get to this point. And now in this match, she is bloodied. May Sarah is bloodied, and they go out and wrestle an all-out war. This wasn't just a match, it was a fight, and it's a match that I think people are going to remember for a long time, especially when we watch what very likely will be the rise of Suzuki through the ranks at a time where the ranks are wide open. We've seen Suzuki challenge for the World of Stardom title. We've seen Suzuki come up short. We've seen her win the 5-star Grand Prix. But now more than ever, there is a path, there is an avenue to greatness in Stardom. And it feels like, based on this batch, based on this performance, based on Mi Vida Loca coming together, she didn't even have them with her. This was not something she was worried about. She was excited to go in there and go to war by herself, and she walked away the winner. She hit the was it the Sky Twister press for the first
Mm-hmm.
time in, I believe, 2 years. She had not hit that since, I believe, the end of 2023. So she was bringing it all out. She put out an absolute show, and she walked away as the victorious member of Crazy Star, or former Crazy Star. For yourself, obviously, you're there. You've seen your fair share of crazy battles as New Japan's top commentator. Where does this rank for you in terms of just, oh, we're going here? And do you feel that Suzuki used this match to not only catapult her, but Mi Vida Loca into a realm that maybe people weren't ready for?
I think that there are holes to fill within this roster, and there have been for a little over a year, ever since the mass exodus, if you could call it that. But even from then, I drew on these ties, and you and I had a conversation well before the event even took place. This idea that Suzuki has almost brought Mi Vida Loca into the fold, similar to how Julia had introduced DDM, right? And this idea of there being this style of unit in Stardom, and that hasn't been something that has been around for a little bit of time. I think absolutely this wasn't the coming out party for Suzuki as much as it was almost like she had come out and then gone back in and then come back out again, right?
Mhm.
And it's happened. It's reestablished Suzuki. One of my favorite aspects of this match, and I say this as someone who has called a lot of death match. I've called a lot of hardcore wrestling, not just in New Japan Pro Wrestling, but my time in the American independents as well. And one of my favorite aspects of this match is that it felt like it was no disqualification, not in mind for Suzuki to utilize a million weapons and bring out the barbed wire and a light tube and whatever else might be expected in death match or in no DQ wrestling. But it was no disqualification, so that way referee Barb Sasaki would not have to separate Suzuki and Mei Seira from just laying into each other. There was no force of separation. There was no use of the rope break. There was nothing. And all of that worked to the advantage of Suzu much more than it ever could have for Mei Seira. You can see that in the way that Suzu, yes, they're both busted open on the outside, and that's really the only amount of time they spent on the outside early on in the goings of the match. Scott, they spent the rest of the match inside the ring.
Yeah.
Very little, if any, weaponry used at all. It had nothing to do with, I want to throw a table, I want to throw a chair, I want to do any of this. It was just, let me have the ability to be as raw and aggressive as I want to
Mhm.
be. And I think that's something that, especially with a woman like Rina Yamashita by the side of Suzuki, that's what we could expect out of Mi Vida Loca going forward. I think it absolutely has put
Mhm.
Suzuki in the position and hopefully won a challenge for a top 2 or top 3 gold sometime in the future.
Yeah, and I think what's always important, this is just a way I've looked at wrestling for a long time. I think if you can allow the stipulation to aid a match rather than be the match, it brings you a long way, and that's what they did here. They didn't let that be the all end all be all of said match. And ultimately you had this incredible look at Suzuki. Very proud of what she accomplished by the end of that. And we'll see how long this keeps going. This felt like a good blow off. And I said this on my other review. I'll say it here. This is one of those matches that you're really happy that got added to this show because it felt like it should be paid off on the biggest stage. So good for them. And obviously, I'm very excited to see what's next for both wrestlers. You know, Mesa is still high speed champion. That is still a thing that is going here. But talk about two wrestlers that I think can step up into the top two title pictures if need
I'll
be.
say I'll say this as well, and just before we move on to the Sendai Girls title match, like I don't think Mei Seira has been knocked down a peg as much as she has just remained stagnant after this matchup. I mean, still reigning as high speed champion. Obviously, this would have been a very, very different matchup. Would not have gone this direction whatsoever if it had been for the high speed title in any regard. But I think Mei Seira, like there's an emotional blow, but there's not a status blow in losing to Suzuki in a no DQ situation. I think that's something to look at, especially when it comes to the direction Neo Genesis is going to be going forward.
Yeah, I think for Mesa, if anything, this the best kind of matches are when people benefit whether you win or lose, and this felt like that, right? You looked at it and you're like, she stepped into a world that isn't hers, and she fought and fought and fought till the very end, and she damn near won. So I'm excited to see what's next for her. And I think overall, you're just kind of excited for what the former Crazy Star has in store for the rest of Stardom moving forward. Next, we did have the world Sendai Girls World Championship match. It was Shiro Hashimoto defeating Maika in the middle of the ring. Like I said earlier, Sendai Girls going 2-0 on the night. Clean as a whistle, power bomb right in the middle, and a devastating power bomb at that. Don't get me wrong. And Maika, the woman who also lost at Stardom Dream Queendom, coming up short here again. Uh, the undefeated days, obviously, from the 5-star Grand Prix have been surpassed. But as we also learned, we'll mix this in here because we're, you know, why wait till after when we're already here?
Right.
Micah did announce at the press conference on April 28th that after May 6th, she will go on an extended break from the ring. For those who have been following Stardom, for those who have been following Maika, she has had her elbow taped for 3 years. That is something that has everyone has focused on, and she has brought it up in the past. When she became World of Stardom champion, she's like, "I have a bad elbow injury, plain and simple. Doctors tell me I should probably take care of it, but I'm gonna keep being a fighting champion. I'm gonna keep going forward." And she's gonna compete. She's gonna head to Fukuoka twice, 2 big matches for her coming up here, one in Stardom, and then of course one in New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is very exciting for her as the Stardom showcase takes on. But yeah, with her not being here, right? Now opening even more of a door in that main event scene. It's fascinating, but for Chiro Hashimoto is business as usual. I don't know if there is a wrestler on this earth that possesses the talent that Hashimoto does, power, speed, athleticism, and just the ability to pretty much take every bit of pain and turn that into just absolute explosiveness. That is something she did here. Maika worked her arm, and ultimately it did not matter. She got thrown through the middle of the ring. Um, for you, Walker, you can obviously talk about the match, but Maika's absence is probably
Mhm.
now the biggest story after this.
Yeah, I mean, just to hit on the match a little bit before getting into the conversation about Micah and how that affects Stardom truly as a whole going forward. I would give Chihiro Hashimoto an unreasonable, unfathomable amount of money to be a part of the Stardom roster full time if I was someone in management. Obviously, Hashimoto very happy where she is as Sendai Girls World Champion, and rightfully so. But good Lord have mercy, an incredible wrestler. I absolutely fell in love with the style the first time I got to see Chihiro Hashimoto actually live at a Sendai Pit show, and it was just so much fun. So Hashimoto getting to make some of these frequent trips, at least as frequent as I've been around, respectively, for Stardom, it has just been incredible to see, and taking it to you have your ace, you have your icon of Stardom, but a true cornerstone of this roster in Maika. It was just a wonderful match. Obviously, Hashimoto walking away, picking up the first defense out of, I think, totaling it to now number 14, 15 something over 6 different reigns. So that's just an unprecedented, unheard of number. It's guaranteed, almost very likely, that she's going to make that 2,000 day mark total combined days, over 6 reigns for the Sendai Girls World title. So I think that Hashimoto has an incredible upside, and I'm excited to see her in Stardom, hoping that there are more opportunities to see
Mm,
Sendai Girls athletes on our roster. Now, in conversation about Micah, yeah, I don't know exactly what has spurred this news, but I do truly believe that there is an element to Micah where she told herself before going through the curtain that night, if I walk away with a loss, then I need to take this time off. If I'm not good enough right now, if I'm not strong enough right now to take down Chihiro Hashimoto for the Sendai Girls World Championship, then maybe I need to take some time away from the ring so I can come back 100% or as close as I can be to it, and then have the strength necessary to put Chihiro Hashimoto down.
mhm,
And I think that it's incredibly, in a way, responsible from Micah, to be able to do that, not only for her own health, but knowing that she is this cornerstone of Stardom. It's going to be very difficult for us to say goodbye to Maika for the period of time that we are going to have to, especially knowing who else we're going to have to say goodbye to. We'll talk about that later on as well. But it's going to be for the better for her career. I think that we are in the business, yes, of selling cards and pay-per-views and events and tickets and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the people that are involved stepping in the ring or sitting on a headset or in the production truck or whatever, the personal lives of these people need to take importance over the sport. And that is absolutely what Maika is doing here, is taking care of her own physical well-being. And I'm never going to be one to fault anyone for doing that. So I'm wishing Maika the best. It's going to be a really weird time for Stardom, and also a really great time for some holes to open up in the roster and this young talent to fill them. We're talking about people like the future Stardom champion Hina. We talked about Rina. We've talked about some of these other names. Hanan, one we'll get to in our next match we talk about. But like, you know, those spots are opening up now, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds because of it.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. Obviously, there is a very clear hole in the main event scene. Uh, two of two of four wrestlers that have challenged for the World of Stardom Championship since the end of last year are now no longer going to be in action after May 6th for one reason or the other. Maika for injury, Tam Nakano because she has gone into darkness following her retirement. Um, like I said earlier, Wrestling Dontaku, there will be a Stardom Showcase match. It will be Maika, Suzuki, and Koguma all on one side, teaming up to face Starlight Kid, Azumi, and Yuna Mizumori at the May 4th edition of Dontaku. So obviously very cool for the Stardom Showcase. This is something that Hiroshi Tanahashi has talked about many, many times in his presidency of, kind of trying to bring these two companies together. Now, yes, I could make a joke about the IWGP Women's title after 2 years of someone holding it and only defending it twice on New Japan events in Japan, but I won't. I won't make a joke.
You
Instead,
could. You wouldn't be
I
the first.
could. No, and I've certainly made many. But instead of doing that, I think it's very cool, obviously, for this to be happening for these wrestlers, and getting a chance to represent over there. And I think it's kind of clears up any doubt regarding FWC, which was kind of a very, very notable aspect of
Mm.
this match. Right after this match was over, that was of course the Goddesses of Stardom Championship match between Wing Gory and FWC kind of left some interesting words out there of like, maybe it's time we bring FWC to the world rather than just the Stardom ring. They felt their roles in what they've been doing are over, and obviously we are in a time where Stars is not doing too great at all. They weren't doing too great before the pay-per-view. They are certainly in a different world now. So before we get to this match, kind of just, I think it's always proper for you to hype up Dontaku and, their opportunity there to step into a big match in Fukuoka, which pretty cool for Maika, Koguma, and Hazuki all getting to represent in their hometown on a New Japan show. That's always very cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that there is a point to bring up, by the way, the idea that Hazuki and Koguma, by the way, not alongside another member of Stars in this 6-woman tag team match we're going to be seeing in New Japan Pro Wrestling coming up on May 4th. It's going to be Wrestling Dontaku 2025 Night 2 Fukuoka Triple Crazy. Maika, Hazuki, and Koguma taking on Azumi, Starlight Kid, and Yuna Mizumori. I think that it's going to be a very good time for New Japan Pro Wrestling fans to take a bit of a step back and say, hey, what is Stardom all about? It's a question that I've seen a lot of people floating around, especially in the circles you and I are in, Scott, because so many times people don't really know or recognize the accessibility that there can be to Joshi wrestling, that there can be to Stardom specifically, and that same sort of concept can apply to the Japanese contingent. And on this side, when it comes to live ticket sales, I know that you kind of hinted at the joke of, well, the IWGP belt has only been defended a very few amount of times on New Japan Pro Wrestling events, but that's absolutely true. And you look at the business behind that, and it's really interesting to kind of scope out what the builds to those look like. I remember calling, I believe it was Mina Shirakawa versus Mayu Iwatani back New Beginning in Sapporo,
Mhm.
2024. And as interesting of a card that might have been, I don't believe there was a lot of Japanese interest enough to move tickets, at least in the favor of that matchup, specifically because these women are not appearing on the road to shows. These shows that we do
Right.
all throughout the prefectures of Japan to build toward these major events, such as the New Beginning in Sapporo event. So I think that events like this in Dantaku and matches like this for the Stardom Showcase, to be able to see some of these women lays incredible groundwork that is absolutely necessary to be able to have more women, have more IWGP Women's Championship defenses on New Japan Pro Wrestling events. If you're asking me, every single major tour should feature one or two Stardom Showcase matches just to
Yeah.
kind of bring this brand
Mhm.
overlap, I guess you could call it. I believe you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
I don't believe the inverse of that is true, particularly. And I think it's just because New Japan Pro Wrestling, not to call it a superior product by any stretch of the words, but a larger product in the grand
Yes.
scale. It's been around much longer, 1972, compared to the length that Stardom has been around, and that being at least a newer acquisition for Bushiroad than New Japan Pro Wrestling has been. So I think that the Stardom Showcase match is great. What am I expecting to see out of it? You would. I, it's very difficult not to go with Maika, Hazuki, and Koguma in this situation. It's a hometown crowd. I think they're going to have a lot more momentum behind them than even the Wonder of Stardom champion Starlight Kid might have, or Azumi, or Yuna Mizumori. But I know one thing for certain: all these women are going to lay it out all out on the line, and I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, I'm very excited for them. I'm very excited to see a little bit more synergy between the two. I think showcase matches are a fine way to maybe slowly introduce the idea of a little bit more Stardom involvement moving forward. And especially when you have an IWGP Women's Champion now like Shuri, you kind of want to see that involvement, continue. There's no one that I think may capture the fandom of a New Japan fan in Stardom than Shuri. So
Right.
that'll be interesting to see as well. But let's talk about this match. I'll tell you what, this is the type of match that I think could win a New Japan fan over too, with how hostile might be a word, uncomfortable certainly a word. Physical,
I definitely used uncomfortable on the broadcast a few
yeah,
times.
yeah,
Stiff, specifically, a
stiff,
stiff
physical,
encounter.
yeah, yeah. This,
Especially, I mean, what we saw between Hazuki and Hanan is absolutely something that would have gotten not just any New Japan fan, but any professional wrestling fan into what Stardom is presenting. Stars, I had this line somewhere in the show talking about when a star implodes, right? It creates a
mm,
supernova, and there's what we have seen here with we can't call it stars imploding as much as we have just seen more division created between Hanan and Saida and Hazuki and Koguma. And I think that all four of these women, especially Koguma and Ida, who have just been playing to their partners more than really dividing or choosing specific siding here, I think they were just hoping that, all right, we're going to have this match and everything's going to go back to normal. You two are going to settle your differences. And I don't really think that's what we got here.
yeah. Yeah, this match was one you circled, maybe because of interest, maybe just because of overall optimism. It could reach its highest potential. but there's something telling about Hanan and Hazuki being, and I know these are just renders they take, but these two being the ones smiling in the match card here, and then proceeding to do what they did. The closing stretch of this match, I think, was legitimately as nasty as anything we saw in Suzuki versus Mei Seira. That match, there was blood. This match, there wasn't, but you would think they were trying to draw it based on how hard they were hitting each other, how stiff they were hitting each other. It was all out action, and we finally saw Hazuki snap. Um, that was kind of the play up over time. Would Hazuki snap? Would she kind of finally give in to what Hanan very clearly wanted her to give into? And when she did, it just went from here to there. You know, besides them, I do want to give credit to Saeed and Koguma. They were great additions to this match, obviously. Considering that they hit the biggest spot of the entire match. The
The
damn muscle
buster.
buster.
Oh my gosh. You know, when I'm so just a little behind the curtain or behind the desk or however you want to call it, you know, we sit here, we have our little box in front of us that controls our audio, and then we have our monitor. And they always tell you in the sport and the business, never take your eyes off the monitor. But as soon as I saw the position that Saya had Kokuma in up for that muscle buster, I couldn't help but experience it through my own eyes rather than a tiny screen in front of me, because I had to be certain what I was seeing wasn't being modified for television. It was insane. I mean, a lot worse has happened. Thank God for the safety of Koguma, because a lot worse has happened off of that maneuver.
Yes.
In
We all
much
think of the
less
same thing.
precarious places.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I
all think
mean,
of the same thing when it comes to that move, right? Samoa
right,
Joe hit it through his entire career, hits it to Tyson Kidd one time, and Tyson Kidd does not wrestle anymore because of it,
right.
right? That's instantly what you go to when you see that muscle buster start, right? You know the pose, you know the spot, and then as I'm seeing Ida walk, I'm like, no, 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 don't do it, do not do this. And then she did it, and that took them out of the match, rightfully so. That
Yes.
there was no reason for them to have to battle back, but ultimately Hazuki and Hanan went to all out war from there, and it was Hanan that pinned her. Kind of like, I think the suddenness of the finish was also perfect for what these two created, right? It was double headbutts, backdrop driver, see you later. It was just like boom, bam, okay, it's over. But really a fantastic match, and a match that, despite their differences, despite their problems, both teams should be absolutely proud of. Because again, they were bringing up the standard of the show, and a show that many are calling one of the great shows of all time. So, uh, it doesn't happen without the way this went down. But
Mhm.
it's hard to, for myself. I have talked about this match in multiple videos now. I've given the lead up, and obviously, big reason for the emotional part was where we ultimately ended up as of today. That was the IWGP Women's Championship match. It was Mayu Iwatani defending for the 10th time against Shuri in the first rematch of the reign. As you so perfectly highlighted in within this match, Mayu Iwatani has beaten wrestlers from AEW, WWE, all wrestlers that are representing in those companies now, right? Stephanie Vaquer represents WWE. Mercedes Monet, Tony Storm, Mina Shirakawa, AEW. Obviously, Utami Hayashishita representing Marigold as the current Marigold World Champion. And of course, Stardom's best of the best, right? You have Shuri, you have Momo Watanabe, you have Azumi, and then, oh, right, the woman who is sitting ringside, Sari, ready and raring to go. This was such an emotional match. And then you have Sari there that's like, what are you people so concerned about? I am
Right.
here for that, right? Enough of this emotional. And the reason it's emotional is twofold. Obviously, for Mayu Iwatani, this was it. This was it for her in her 14-year run in Stardom. The only place she's ever called home in her career. She debuted on January 23rd, 2011, and ended her career in the ring on April 27th, 2025, in front of the biggest crowd in Stardom history. And on the other side, you have Shuri, a woman that you and myself have talked about many times behind the scenes, behind the cameras, of why is she not going for the world title. She lost the World of Stardom Championship at the end of 2022 to Julia. She's had one singles title challenge since then, and that was, of course, the Mayu Iwatani match, January 4th, 2024. Fast forward to this moment. Fast forward to the build to this match. You saw Shuri as emotional as ever heading into this match. Shuri, which, mind you, this is a former UFC fighter. This is really once upon a time the final boss, to shout out Meiko Satomura, but the final boss of Stardom. That is the role she ended up in for much of 2022. She had the match, of course, in 2021 that really helped put Stardom on the map to many people's eyes with Utami Hayashishita. She had the title reign and then eventually the title match with Julia at the end of 2022 that a lot of people take attention to as well. She's one of the greats. She really is. And seeing her not do a lot for a couple of years was hard as a fan. But as we sit here now, she's champion. She's champion. After an all-out war between the two, she was finally able to be the one to dethrone Mayu Iwatani. And like I said, a very emotional match, a fantastic match at that. And yeah, I just this is a match I'll remember for a very, very long time. Obviously, there's more to it now than there was on the surface, but when you see the emotions of Mayu Iwatani heading into the match, someone who, pretty good is not showing such emotions. When you see the emotions of Shuri after the match, when she's finally won, you have a real appreciation for what these two put into their work. And I will say this, when we'll talk about Starlight Kid versus Azumi, they they left it really hard to follow. I will give them that. Obviously, the main event was going to do a great job because that was as emotional as that was, but they left it really hard to follow. So, for you, obviously, you have kept tabs on the IWGP Women's Title, understandably. And while we can make all the jokes or whatever about the title, yada, yada, yada. People have done it. This belt is established as one of the most prestigious belts in wrestling. The names I named in Mayu Iwatani's run alone tell you how prestigious this belt is. And now Shuri will get a chance to set that standard. So for you, obviously watching this match and covering this match and describing this match, how was it for you there in the building? Because as my friend Pep said over when we did the review over on Sunday, there was a different feeling in that building. You could just kind of feel it. And I'm sure you felt it being in that building on the call.
It was very emotional. Very emotional from the moment Mayu Iwatani's music hit. Emotional from the point where Mayu Iwatani looks down at the IWGP Women's Championship right before she's about to hand it to our official, and she takes just a little bit longer than usual. And it was at that moment on the broadcast where I questioned, what is Mayu Iwatani without championship gold? Because championship gold is what has defined Mayu Iwatani. It's what has driven her. It's what she has fought for. And admittedly, it feels as though the past year, especially knowing that there are places that Mayu Iwatani very well could go, may feel called to be at, the one thing that we know for a fact has kept her around is the IWGP Women's Championship. And that weight and that realization in that very moment, it became very apparent that if Mayu Iwatani did lose the IWGP Women's Championship, as we saw, that we would be getting a press conference, which did indeed come in news that would exactly follow. And we're going to touch on that in a minute, but the IWGP Women's Championship is holding the status which it does because of Mayu Iwatani. And yes, other women have held that gold, and other women did what they could to try and establish it itself. But in a championship, which has only had, 4 title holders now, something in the area of that, the IWGP Women's Championship is only the status quo in women's wrestling outside of the World of Stardom Championship. Why? Because Mayu Iwatani held it, and because Mayu Iwatani made it such. Why is Stardom, Scott Edwards? Why is Stardom the greatest women's wrestling organization in the world? It is because Mayu Iwatani made it such. And that's all that needs to be said there. And whenever we have this match and we see Shuri with the victory, and we see the emotion that overcomes her. And you're showing the picture, the graphic on the screen right now. There's so much emotion just within that shot right there. The realization of what has been done. The fans might not have known it that yet. Iwatani had realized at this point that maybe it was time for a change, and especially following the comments that Iwatani made in the ring. That is a very, very heavy belt, and you won it from me. You need to carry it with pride, and you need to defend it with pride. And it felt like, Shuri being one of those wrestlers who is from, this very close generation with Iwatani in Stardom and in women's wrestling overall. It felt like, all right, I'm on my way out, and you're next. You're going to you can't say be the new icon. That's not going to exist. There will never be another Mayu Iwatani. But the closest you're going to come to it, good God, Shuri, you need to be able to carry that weight. And I think that Shuri has all the potential in the world to be able to do so. It is just a matter of time before it is realized as a very successful women's champion. I think she's a wonderful representation of the IWGP, and I can't wait to see where she goes with it. Those are my thoughts.
I don't, and I can't say this for sure, but as someone who obviously is very, very, very supportive of Mayu Iwatani and the career she's made, I don't think it can be stressed. Stardom wouldn't be existing right now if it wasn't for Mayu Iwatani's presence through many of the ups and downs through its first 10 years. There was what people will forget. There was a Stardom pre-Bushi Road, and for a lot of that, it was Mayu Iwatani helping put it together and bring it forward. I talk about this a lot, but especially now, this was the woman who was there when Io Shirai left for WWE. This was the woman who was there when Kairi Hojo did the same. This was the woman who was there when, unfortunately, you know, Kagetsu Hazuki retired, Arisa Hoshiki was forced to retire, and of course Hana Kimura passed away. She was the World of Stardom champion. Oh, and by the way, COVID was happening at the same time. It was as bad of a situation as you could do, especially to start off the Bushiroad era, and yet who reigned as champion to help bring them forward. That was Mayu Iwatani. Um, so before we kind of get into where Shuri goes from here, it's only right that we talk about this now. Mayu Iwatani announced today, as I talked about earlier, she is leaving the World Wonder Ring for the first time in her career. She announced that as of April 28th, she will no longer be with the company. A very, very big announcement that I can obviously just sit here and say, and I've said I expected for a year. It shouldn't come as a shock to some people. I've seen people debate WWE. It's stop. Just stop. That's not what's happening here. I'll make that very simple. I know people like to. Mayu doesn't like America that much. Like like plain and simple. That is not a place that I expect to be happening, but that's not the point here. The point is that 14 years of her career, the first 14 years of her career, the only place that she called home. She is of course moving on, but she leaves a legacy that is nothing more, nothing less, I should say, than the greatest Stardom wrestler of all time. Um, like I said on the breaking news audio that I did last night, like I said, or like I will continue to say this week, because I'm sure I will be talking about Mayu plenty, plenty more. Um, yeah, this is a wrestler who did it her own way. She was never the chosen one, but she was the one at the end of the day. A credit to her what she created with the IWGP Women's Championship. Credit to her with her two-time World of Stardom champion, two-time Wonder of Stardom champion, SWA champion, high speed champion, multi-time Goddesses of Stardom champion, multi-time Artist of Stardom champion, the Grand Slam winner of Stardom, winning every single title, every single tournament. She has done it all. So bravo to her. But we are here to talk business at the end of the day, Walker, and business picked up.
Well, and before we move on to anything further, I think
Of
that
course.
there's so much to say about Mayu Iwatani, and I will never have enough words, even as eloquently as I could have put it in a broadcast or in a podcast format. Um, I want to draw some ties real quick between a product that I've been calling a lot more frequently than I've had the privilege to call Stardom, and that being New Japan Pro Wrestling. And there was a period of time in the mid 2000s where New Japan Pro Wrestling was at basically its wits end. This idea that the doors would be shutting, this idea that the organization that Antonio Inoki started in 1972 would cease to exist. And there is one individual that we referred to as the ace of the universe for a reason, because he saved us from those dying days as being IWGP heavyweight champion and being this guiding light. And that is Hiroshi Tanahashi. And I have long made the comparisons between Mayu Iwatani and Hiroshi Tanahashi, and I would never call either one of them a stretch. That is how much Iwatani means to the World Wonder Ring and means to women's wrestling overall. Scott, there is a very uncomfortable feeling within New Japan right now at the idea that Tanahashi is retiring. And I can report that it is not a massive expose. It's this idea of we don't know, we've forgotten what New Japan looks like without this man because of how integral he has been. And well, he's still going to be around as president, obviously. But there's that same feeling that I feel you could apply to Mayu Iwatani and her exit from Stardom. I've seen a lot of fan response. I've seen a lot of fans very upset. I've seen a lot of fans upset at Iwatani herself, and I saw a lot of that after Tanahashi announced his retirement back in October. This feeling that something is being taken away from us, and in a way, you could argue that something is going away in the way of change. But I said earlier on in this podcast, and I've heard you say it multiple times before, Scott, this idea of supporting a wrestler in their wishes. And if Meiko Satomura wants to go out on top, we as a wrestling community need to support that. And if Mayu Iwatani has plans outside of Stardom, no matter what those look like, it is time to support that. And if Hiroshi Tanahashi wants to go out in the way that he goes out, then it is on to us to support that because of what these athletes have given us. They have given us their body and their blood and their sweat and their tears. And by God, I know there are a lot of tears that were shed at the announcement of this news. I wish the absolute best for the former IWGP Women's Champion. Mayu Iwatani's done such an incredible job representing Stardom on truly every single world stage. There are so many athletes that you've just seen across social media, those in WWE, AEW, New Japan, even as well, expressing their gratitude for Iwatani. So I'm very excited to see what there is for Iwatani to do next. Because let's be honest, Scott, she's done everything there was to do in Stardom. There was nothing else that Iwatani was going to do that she had not already done. If it's on to new challenges, I wish Iwatani the best.
Yeah, it as a fan of hers, as someone who calls her the greatest ever, and I think bringing up Tanahashi is very good by you, and kind of her role, and I think there's a world for a lot of fans that maybe don't know what a New Japan looks like without Hiroshi Tanahashi. I could tell you for sure there has never been a Stardom without Mayu Iwatani, so that is going to be a fascinating world. Um, but she is someone, to just go off and before we move on here. When you say she represented Stardom on a world stage, I don't think there's a better way to say it than she represented Stardom in Madison Square Garden. She represented Stardom in Tokyo Dome, the two meccas really of professional wrestling, right? Those are the two places that people talk about all these years later. It's like, this is it. And she is one who defended championships in both, and represented Stardom to the best of her ability. So, obviously, congratulations to her. I'll be back plenty more to talk about her over the weeks to come. But when one door closes, another opens, or another one gets slammed through because enough is enough. And that, of course, is the best wrestler in the world today, Sari, saying, "Enough is enough. I am challenging for that IWGP Women's title. I don't care if I have to walk into Yokohama Arena and sit there and wait for the end. I'm not missing the opportunity this time." Of course, she wanted to be the one to end Mayu Utani's reign as champion. That will not happen. Instead, she stares into the eyes of Shuri, the same woman she went to a 30-minute time limit draw earlier this year at Sauriism. I don't know how anyone doesn't just see this and say, "Hell yeah, here we go." Like, we could, you and me have talked about, right? Throughout this episode, Stardom's gonna look very, 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 very different over the next couple months. But if there's anything to look forward to that is very much gonna happen in a Stardom ring, it is this right here, because this is the most surefire thing that is happening post Queendom. We know what this looks like, we know what this can be, and it is greatness personified, and it is going to be for the IWGP Women's title. There is a reason that title, as we said, is so prestigious, and there is a reason that the best in the world, the Sun God, is coming for that belt. So hell yeah, that's all I got to say. Obviously, I'm very excited. As someone who obviously covers Sari's career very closely, that has spoken to Sari before, I am rooting for her. I'm rooting for Shuri. I'm conflicted. I don't want Shuri to lose on defense number one, but I can never cheer against the Sun God either. But that's the beauty of this match. Whoever wins, we all win. So very cool to see her there. And Mayu's trying to leave very emotionally, and Sari's like, where are you going? It's like, no, she's
Right.
not. It's like it's just a very different energy, right? We had so many emotional energies, and then Sari's all business all the time, and I think that was kind of a fun change from the emotional end of this match. Was like her just walking in there and being like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I'm very intrigued by this idea, and it wouldn't shock me to see one way or another. Obviously, one would expect the IWGP Women's Championship to be defended on a Stardom branded card, but those Sari-ism shows, Scott, those are wonderful cards, top to bottom,
Yes.
every single time. They are can't miss events, and it wouldn't shock me that if the goal is not to have the women's championship defended, by Shuri at a Saudi-ism card coming up sometime in the near future, then a driving force for the most prominent freelancer in professional wrestling today is for her to capture that women's championship and defend it herself on her own promoted events. I mean, you talk about a hell of a draw, right? I mean, if we talk about money being a motivator for anyone, it very well might be one for Saudi. And I just think there's so much potential here. And it does intrigue me, in fact, Scott, that there was no mention and really no even appearance from either of these women at the press conference that was held earlier on in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I,
there's mystery to when this happens. Um, Certainly interest. If I was to circle a date now, just because I know the Stardom schedule, I look at June 21st at
mm,
Yoyogi. Yoyogi just feels like the place for this match to happen. Obviously, it's still, it's a ways away. It's a month and a half, but Sari's waited long enough. I know she's probably itching, and unless she announced a Sariism event tomorrow, I don't think she's gonna be able to book it herself. So I think Yogi will be the perfect place for that match, a big time signature match to pair with whatever the World of Stardom Championship match likely is at that show. And it's gonna be one hell of a fight. That's gonna be one of the most unpredictable matches we see all year.
that and it does feel like it would be a very Saudi thing, by the way, right? The idea that she books herself in her own show in the morning just to make a Yoyogi appearance or something later on in the day and then win the women's championship. I mean, just that's something that could completely feasibly possibly happen.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I I'm very excited for what's to come with the IWGP Women's Championship. And this, I don't want to get hopes up. Obviously, I'm not privy to anything but this in combination with the perceived randomness of this Stardom Showcase match. Hopefully, this entails good things when it comes to IWGP representation all across the board in the Bushi Road fight system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fascinating to see what a freelancer with the IWGP Women's Title would look like, right? We've had Stardom wrestlers, we had whatever Mercedes Monet was at the time. Um, right, she didn't have a true home. I guess New Japan was her true home at that time. It'll be fascinating, but that's the fun part of this. But let's get to the final two matches here before we wrap up. That, of course, being the Wonder of Stardom Championship match, Starlight Kid versus Azumi. I don't have again. I hate having to do this, but like, it's hard to talk about this match because it was literally bookended by two of the most emotional and biggest matches in Stardom's history. Which is it really is it hurts these two in many ways, but they're professionals. They know what they were up
Mhm.
against, and they went out there to try to have their match, right? The eternal foes. As you and me talked about, and as you very well highlighted, there hasn't been much dislike between these two recently. But, with leadership on the line, things change. When, would Azumi accept being number two to Starlight Kid officially? Because they've always been equals. And ultimately, that is the world we now live in because Starlight Kid successfully defended the Wonder of Stardom championship. Obviously, I think it's very apparent Starlight Kid is not 100%, but
Mm.
she's a fighting champion. She is a competitive champion, and until someone can beat her, she is going to reign as champion. And Azumi was not the woman here to do that.
Well, credit where credit is due. There is no match I would have rather had in this semi-main event position than Starlight Kid taking on Azumi for numerous reasons. One of which being the Wonder of Stardom Championship eventing over taking place over the IWGP Women's Championship match. I think that really goes to show a few things from a booking and a matchmaking management side of Stardom, and that is how the organization views Starlight Kid and Azumi, and B, how the organization is positioning the Wonder of Stardom Championship. And I think it's in the position it absolutely needs to be in. It is a very similar position on the New Japan Pro Wrestling side of things as to how our matchmakers have positioned the IWGP Global Heavyweight Championship. Two white belts for your comparison right there. Starlight Kid, I think, showed out a lot. I think Azumi showed out in a really wonderful way. And what this match felt like to me was two women continuing to learn how to adapt their high speed style into a big two championship match, singles semi main, and the biggest Stardom show in history style. It was stretched out to over 20 minutes in time that we had. I think that it was like just another step, right? It was another
Yeah.
step. There was a 4-4-4 record, I believe I counted going in to the event. Their most recent match before that, I had actually called that as well for United Japan Pro Wrestling back in Sapporo, June of 2024. And this match absolutely blew that one that I got to experience for the first time out of the water. I thought it was in a rough spot having to bookend two very emotional moments, one that we had no idea would even come in the main event. But yeah, kudos, credit, all the words to Starlight Kid and Azumi.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But uh let's get to it. Obviously, the very emotional, draining, but everything I think you'd want a retirement match to be, and that of course was none other than the career versus career World of Stardom Championship match. Saya Kamatani versus Tam Nakano. And I think for a lot of people, I don't want to say there was an ability to try and hope and pray and look at Sayaka cry and be like, you could save us all with that wish. But that was a lot of the build up. And the reason I always stayed true that this was Tam's final show is because Tam Nakano has many things. The one thing she will always be is the biggest supporter in the world for Saya Kamatani. That is what I will remember her as, just as much as I will remember her for the Tam Road and Tam Lore and all these different things. Right? We can all make the jokes, and I also remember her being one of the all-time greats in Stardom, one of, if not the biggest draw in Joshi since the prime days of All Japan Women's. We have to give her that credit as well. After all, who has sat in the two biggest main events in Stardom's history? That's Tam Nakano. There's a reason for that. But as we sit here and we look back on her career, maybe there will be no contribution more important than that of her understanding, her willingness, and her belief in Saya Kamatani. They've never stood side by side in the same faction, but they've always been connected. Saya Kamatani went as far to say, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be wrestling if it wasn't for you." And you felt that within the match. I said to you, Walker, in the lead up to this, um, there is there is no way in this world Saya Kamatani is not going to break down into tears. There's just no way. She's too
Mm.
emotional, and she was doing it mid match. She was
Yeah.
starting to get super duper emotional because it's the retirement match, right? It's the belief of this is ending for one of us. This match, this face off, this dance that we've done so many times, it's ending here, no matter what. And that realization hit her. And Tam, being Tam, fought through that, and she just said, "Slap me, fight me. Let's
Mm.
end this once and for all." Right? Tam was the one that said, "No ceremony, no retirement road, nothing. Whoever loses goes off into the darkness. Whoever loses disappears." And she held up her end of the bargain. This match ended with her losing to the Twilight Dream, her very own finisher, the same move that has won her countless championships, the same move that has won her countless matches, as Saya Kamatani pinned Tam Nakano and ended her career once and for all.
If you are watching this matchup and you look into the eyes of Saya Kamitani, much the way that I spoke of Mayu Iwatani earlier on in the evening, when she looks down at the World of Stardom Championship and she hands it to the official, yes, indeed, you see the emotion in her eyes. And I think part of which is because it has dawned on her finally that even though this is everything she has been asking for months and months and months, from even prior the loser leaves Stardom match to afterward, to the point that the bell rang, it dawned on her that she was either going to kill the dream of the woman that made her, or her dreams would die a sudden death as well. And I think in one way, both have happened. Both have taken place in different regards. I mean, yes, she did end the Twilight Dream that is Tam Nakano, but there is a dream that I believe Saya Kamitani didn't realize she had until the final bell sounded, and that was a reconnection with Tam Nakano. And one last time we did get just that, when it was a beautiful visual at the end. And I was at a complete loss for words, so much so that I didn't have anything to say for the rest of the broadcast. And that was exactly what you're seeing right now. Tam Nakano carried up the ringside area by Saya Kamitani, and they sit in the ground and they look at everything that they have built. They look at everything that they have built over the past few months. No, I am not talking about your post match promos. No, I am not talking about any material in that way. But every single person in that building put into Yokohama Arena 7,503 for those two women alone could have sold that entire building the way that it did. And it was them acknowledging for the final time, this is what we've done. And I'm so intrigued as to what this means for Kamitani going forward, because as much of this woman has been filled with hate and vitriol and every negative term in the book, we saw the old Saya Kamitani for just that brief moment. And I wonder if we are going to be seeing a little bit more of that old Saya Kamitani going forward, knowing that there is a lack of light in Stardom with Tam Nakano gone. And how that presents itself, how Natsuko Tora or Konami or anyone else in hate react to that, we've yet to see. But I'm very intrigued with what goes forward in this matchup. I thought it was an incredible showcase of what professional wrestling can be.
Yeah.
Scott, we often hear people talk about in professional wrestling this idea of cinema, and I hate the word. When
Yeah.
people, and this is not a shot at anyone who watches any certain wrestling organization, I've just never appreciated the usage of the word cinema in professional wrestling, because I've never viewed professional wrestling as sports entertainment, as some people want to call it. It is a sport.
Mhm.
It is combat sports at its finest. And while there are theatrical elements, you're going to find a lot of them in Stardom. This is the closest I have ever felt to a curtain call in professional wrestling. The lights go out, they come back on, and Tam Nakano and Saya Kamitani are gone. And we know that we are going to see Saya Kamitani again. We know we are going to see Saya Kamitani versus Sayaka Kurata coming up May 11th in Korakuen Hall. But to know that that was the final visual of Tam Nakano in professional wrestling, not even appearing at the post-night press conference, it was truly, truly something special.
The most fascinating story moving forward is that of Saya Kamitani. One could argue the most fascinating story of the past year has been Saya Kamitani. It's the continuation of her being the face, the undeniable face of Stardom, whether that is within her darkness, being the hate member that is willing to cheat to win, or that is Saya Kamitani in her purest form, sitting there crying emotionally side by side with her mentor. Saya Kamitani over the past year has suffered a lot of loss. Uh, right? She has watched her tag team partner of a long time, Utami Hayashishita, leave. That resulted in her wearing red gear, which still pops me. You know, she watched Queen's Quest dissolve from under her at Stardom the Conversion a year ago. And now she has watched the woman who she said, word for word, is the reason she's in pro wrestling go away. But the difference here is this was under her full control. And I think that is a very interesting story. The Utami thing she couldn't control. Queen's Quest she tried to control. She fully tried to control, but Momo Watanabe's flipping back and forth really ended up being the final straw for her in the end. And that is ultimately how she watched Queen's Quest disappear. This was her control. This was something that she needed for her career. She wanted for her career. She blames Tam Nakano for the reason she is the way she is today. And as they sat there at the top of the ring, you saw forgiveness. You had the great line that you said on Twitter about Tam drove Saya to darkness and brought her back to the light. That is exactly what we saw here. We will see what that light looks like, though. Like you said, hate's gonna have they're gonna have their thoughts for sure. We haven't seen Saya Kamatani since the lights went dark. We won't see Saya Kamatani until who knows. They may have announced the cards within the past. I mean, there's a show tomorrow. I'm gonna assume they've announced cards. Maybe. Yes, they have announced cards. Let's see what Saya Kamatani's first matchup here is. She will be teaming with Natsuko Tora, Ruaka, Azusa, and Naba to face the Cosmic Angels and Yorihime. So a real test of where her mentality is, where where she is moving forward. Because, like you said, she is going to defend the World of Stardom Championship against Sayaka Kata on May 11th. And that's something to look forward to, right? That is going to be an important match for her, and we'll see where that takes her. But that is the beauty of All Star Grand Queendom. That is the beauty of Stardom. That is the beauty of Joshi Wrestling. That is the beauty of pro wrestling, is these moments, these shows. And my guy, you were on the call for every step of the way. You absolutely crushed it. You should take you should pat yourself on the back. I know I know you've been through hell and back over the past couple of days, obviously with travel and all that. And the fact that you're doing this right now makes you a little bit crazy, but hey, we got to all be a little bit crazy to be in this world of pro wrestling. Am I right?
Yes.
So I want to first of all thank you for the call that you did, especially in that main event. When that match ended and you made your final call and you just let that rest, you let that sink in. And I think for a lot of people that might have in some ways it might have hurt them in many ways, right? It's having to accept the reality of where we were going. And we are now heading into a unknown territory in Stardom,
Mm.
right? Mayu Iwatani, gone. That's never been a thing in Stardom's history. Tam Nakano, gone. She has been the focal point of this company for the past 5 years. Maika, gonna go away for injury for a while. Those are 3 top stars, all going away, but that creates opportunity. Everyone talks about opportunity. Everyone talks about grabbing that mysterious brass ring or whatever the hell you want to call it, breaking through the glass ceiling. Boy, oh boy, is Stardom a place to do that right now.
You're absolutely right about it. And I first off, I just want to address the first portion of your comment. Thank you for the kind words. I've shockingly received shocking to me at least received like a world of positive feedback and engagement off of that solo call that I did at All-Star Grand Queendom. And it's really funny because speak personally for a minute, there are some calls that I do in professional wrestling where the world raves about them, and maybe it's a confidence thing, maybe it's something, but I don't exactly look at them and go, that was stellar or that was special. And obviously hindsight 2020. That happened to be one of those nights. And I think part of it, and I talked to you about this a little bit, the lack of consistency with bookings with Stardom has led to some moments of I have to lapse my viewership to focus on my paid work with New Japan Pro Wrestling, right? And
Right.
that's why I have these really intense study sessions where, if anyone doesn't know, I called Scott for like 3 hours and we went through the entire card in people's history back to the mid 2010s and whatever else. And that's so much fun for me. I love diving into this history with Stardom, this recent history as it is, just as much as I love diving into New Japan Pro Wrestling, just as much as I love diving into All Japan Women's and old WWF. I try to be a real student of the game. And one of the things that you talked to me about at one point is Stardom fans feeling there was a lack of care surrounding English coverage, or a lack of passion for previous English commentary that there might have been for Stardom. And all that I want to tell anyone is that there is always going to be a care and a passion for the World Wonder Ring, for the Cerulean Blue, for whatever product that I am a part of, because I am a part of it and because I'm passionate about professional wrestling. And I hope that that came out in the way that I had intended for All-Star Grand Queendom. And as much as I'm talking about calling it solo, shout out to Waka Tsukiyama, because there is one thing that Waka does that I can't, and that is speak Japanese and translate. And a very, very necessary, especially in an organization like Stardom. And as much as these women speak their minds so powerfully, it's a very necessary part of the job there. So Waka Tsukiyama, always lovely to have her in the booth during that period. But I just want to say, thank you, Scott, for your work, and Peps as well, who I know you had on one of your broadcasts recently to talk about All-Star Grand Queendom, for your help in the preparation. All that there is next is for hopefully Stardom to see some of these pieces of positive will and good vibes and whatever it may be toward English coverage, and quote unquote give the ball. Right. I've made numerous offers and attempts to try and do everything that I can to provide English content for Stardom. And I think Stardom was well aware of that, and knows that if the need is there, which I would argue it is, but if the need is there from an internal standpoint, that I'll be there for it. And whenever the call comes, whether it be June, 21st coming up for the conversion, whether it be coming up in July for five-star Grand Prix, Grand Prix rather, Grand Prixdom, Jesus, or the final night, even a five-star Grand Prix, Ryogoku in December, whatever it may be. I just want to say thank you guys for coming for the ride on this one. And whenever I'm back on the five-star Joshi show, whenever I'm back for Stardom, it's going to be a very special time for me.
We're very happy to have you calling and helping describe the journey that is obviously happening in the ring. I think so many times I actually, as of late, I think people are realizing how important commentary is to the overall pro wrestling broadcast. The more and more in other companies people talk about it. And when I see the support and the admiration for someone like yourself for what you did on this show, knowing how much work you put in the lead up, because you like you said, you have to, you're focused on New Japan, you're focused on where you're getting paid to work, right? That's what you got to do. But at the end of the day, you put in the work once again to be there, be prepared for a show that will go down as the biggest in the company's history. So I applaud you for that. I thank you for that. Before we get out of here, are there any final plugs you have? Obviously, where can the people find you, what to look forward to, and where are we going to hear you next?
Yeah,
In
you're gonna
terms of
hear
commentary.
you're going to hear a lot of dates coming up. To touch briefly on some New Japan Pro Wrestling stuff coming up May 3rd, Wrestling Dantaku Night 1, May 4th, Wrestling Dantaku Night 2. Night 2 is going to feature the Stardom Showcase match, which is certainly going to be a very fun one. So any Joshi wrestling fans want to check that out, make sure you tune in on those dates. I do not have confirmed dates as of yet for the next time there will be English coverage for Stardom, but the dates you're going to want to watch out for: Korakuen Hall, May 11th, the World of Stardom title on the line. May 21st, the Wonder of Stardom title on the line in Korakuen Hall. June 21st, Yoyogi, the Conversion, a very controversial event last year. I know you're well aware of that. I know you're ready for it, or you're not ready for it. I don't know, but we're going to go there. All right, Scott, you better prepare for yourself. July 27th, the kickoff, night 1, 5-star Grand Prix. August 23rd, 5-star Grand Prix final. There's all the potential in the world. There may be live English coverage for the 5-star Grand Prix final. I'll have already been in Japan 5 weeks. What's another one for the for G1 Climax 35, right? So that schedule is going to overlap in that way. We'll see kind of what happens there. But please just support professional wrestling. Whether it is Joshi wrestling, Marigold, if I'm even allowed to say that, Stardom, any professional wrestling in the world, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, AEW, whatever it is, support the sport, support the business of professional wrestling itself. And thank you for supporting me, Scott, and anyone else that is watching tonight in this journey that I've been a part of. It's been so much fun to just be able to dip my toes into the Joshi landscape, and it motivates me. It motivates me to not only become a better broadcaster, but to become a historian one day, future tenant. I am very motivated and excited for what's to come. So if anyone wants to follow me on any social media, the visual will show it at Velvet Voice WS, and any other any platform, Blue Sky, however you say it, Twitter, X, Facebook, LinkedIn, I don't know, whatever. You toss me something. But that has been it. If you can't tell, we're very tired people, Scott. There's been a lot happening, a lot of wrestling. I call wrestling in like 10 hours. This is gonna be, yeah. I got
Good
homework,
luck.
Scott. I got a lot of stuff.
I know. That's why we gotta get out of here. But thank you so much for joining me, going down this ride, talking about this show, doing this exclusive with me. It was always very fun. Thank you for bringing pro wrestling from Japan to many people's ears through your commentary. I think that's always very important. I will say this, as someone who has known you pre New Japan, I knew you before that. It's great to see you rise. It's great to see where you've gotten, and hopefully this is, like I've said before to you, this is only the beginning, but I know how much you appreciate your craft and put work into your craft, and I know a lot of other people are taking appreciation to that. Before I get out of here, I'll do some final plugs for myself. Over on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ScottEWrestling, where you might be watching this very show. If you want to see what happened during WrestleMania week in the world of Joshi, I have a video up talking about it all, whether it be the 2 Stardom shows, American Dream 2025 in Sin City and in Neon City, the TJPW show, or the Marvelous show, or Megan Bain versus Bozilla, or Suzuki versus Masha Slamovich. You get the point. Those are all available now over on the Fight Game Media Network YouTube channel. You can check out the 5-star review, All-Star Grand Queendom 2025 day of review. That will be where you can find that, because this one with Walker will exclusively be on this YouTube channel, so I don't have to clip that as much. So Walker saved me some time. God bless. I appreciate that, Walker. And then, of course, breaking news audio is up on the YouTube channel as well. That will be YouTube exclusive. That was Mayu Iwatani leaves Stardom. I will have so much more content this week. I will be focusing on Tam Nakano's career in the coming weeks as well, because it's only right we celebrate a wrestler who obviously put everything she could into the World Wonder Ring. We'll also be celebrating Meiko Satomura because she retires tomorrow, because that's the world of Joshi right now. That is the world we live in. It's emotional. It's emotional. Thank you so much, Walker. Thank you, everyone that has listened. Until next time, everybody. So long. See you later.